do you have a desire to walk away from radio and make wrestling your full-time day job?
I am the Solid Monster, and you're watching Tom Talks Rubbish right here on YouTube. And hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this one.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish, and stand back for another interview. This time, I'm joined by Rick Ucchino from the Believe Network and the Believe Pro Wrestling Podcast. If I butchered that, I do apologize.
It's all good. It's the Believe in Pro Wrestling Podcast. Yes, also right for Cage Side Seats, which is one of the subsidiaries of SB Nation. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man.
So if we take this back to the beginning, because I like to go back to the beginning with my guests.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Where do you first discover wrestling?
Oh, man. So I grew up in the glory days, right? Like I first started watching when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And it was my grade school friends who were like really into it. They were playing a video game, a wrestling video game, back on the first original PlayStation, like the old school gray box PlayStation. And that's
the
how far
PS1.
The PS1. That's as far back as I go. All right. And so they were playing, and all of a sudden I see the Nature Boy Ric Flair against Sting, and I'm talking pre-NWO Sting. And I was like, what the hell is this? And I just wanted to dive kind of more into that. So it was my friend Dustin at the time who really kind of got me into it. And I started, that would have been about 97, 98. So if you know your history, WCW, WWF at the time, Monday Night Wars, that's when everything really started getting ramped up. You had DX, you had NWO, Edge and Christian, and the Hardys were all coming up at that time. Those guys were my guys in WWE. I was a big fan of DDP and Sting into the WCW days. And yeah, it really just kind of hooked me in because, like I said, I grew up in that glory time, like Peak, Rock, Hogan, and Austin. That really kind of set it off and got me hooked, and I've been hooked ever since.
If you discovered that sort of wrestling, like The Rock, Austin, Flair, Sting, at the age you are now, with no prior wrestling experience, do you think you'd be as hooked in? And I'll reverse the question and say, if you discovered today's wrestling at the age you discovered that wrestling, would you be as hooked in, do you reckon?
Oh man, that is so tough. And it's really hard to kind of decipher that because it's a completely different product, right? And it's a completely different environment for today's kids. I would say no, because there's so many options available to today's kids, right? It's not just, hey man, when I was growing up, if you were lucky enough to have cable, you only had like so many options that were available to you. And even regular sports nowadays with the NHL and NFL and MLB, it's everywhere, right? It's not just like the game of the week that we used to get back in the heyday. There's so many options that I think it would be darn near impossible for me to predict that I would be such a big wrestling fan, especially in the last few years when, you look at some of the stories and creative arcs haven't exactly been rousing in WWE. Hopefully that is changing for the better now. But yeah, right. It would just be very hard for me to say yes, because you look at the audiences back in when I started watching wrestling, you had 10 million people a night watching Monday Night Raw. Today, you're lucky if you get 2 million. And I think part of that has to do with the internet, but also the vast options. There's so many streaming services and so many shows. It's too hard to predict what I would be into if I started watching today. So I would probably say chances are no, I wouldn't be as heavy into professional wrestling as I was when I was a kid.
Which obviously brings me quite nicely to, you wouldn't be in the career you're in today. Well, some of the career you're into.
Some of it, yeah.
Today, because we should mention you host the morning news for a news station, correct?
Yeah. So News Radio 700 WLW in Cincinnati is the top rated news talk AM station in the United States, and I co-host the morning news there. So I've been doing that for, oh man, I've been there for about 9 years now. So I've been in radio, which is my shoot job, shall we say, for about 13 years now. So I've been doing that for a while. So yeah, that was always the day job, but the pro wrestling job, yeah, man, that's just come about in the last few years.
Do you have a desire to walk away from radio and make wrestling your full-time day job?
I have a desire to do one job, period. And I say that as a family man. And the reason why I work as many jobs as I do is for them. To make sure that we are living comfortably enough. And in radio, that can be a bit difficult to do solo. There are a lot of people that have side hustles, right? So
yeah,
whichever job that I could grab onto that will allow me to work one job and spend more time with my family and allow me to provide for them at the same way that I do now, working the multiple jobs that I do, because I also cover the Cincinnati Bengals for Sirius XM. I got a lot of different side gigs right now. I will dive right onto that. Whatever it is, yes, there is part of me that would love to travel to every single WWE, AEW event and do the press junkets and cover it like, a beat writer does when he covers the New York Yankees, and travels with a team. I would love nothing more to do that. I genuinely enjoy the hustle and the craziness of covering a live WWE event. It is spectacular. I just got back from SummerSlam, a week ago. It was insane. The humidity in Nashville was crazy. The traffic was nuts. I loved every second of it. It was great.
Do you think, though, the fact that you have so many hustles, in your own words, maybe helps you appreciate the fact that you get to do something like wrestling and the Cincinnati Bengals that you're actually a fan of? And it's like, this is not lost on me that I get to do all these cool things.
I appreciate every job I have, and that includes radio, because look, man, I'm not digging ditches. I'm not running around, every night, waiting tables or as a bartender and relying on the generosity of others to, put food on my table. Right. Like I don't work for a living. Like I don't, I spend a lot of my time doing what I do, but I genuinely enjoy all of it across the board. I'm not I don't hate what I do. I don't dread waking up in the morning. I am mentally exhausted by the end of the night, and the end of the week for sure. And I need to take my time to recoup, and burnout is a real thing, as it is with everything. But yeah, man, no, I appreciate the fact that I am blessed enough to do what I do for a living.
What have you put in place? You talked about burnout there. Have you put anything in place so you don't get burned out with any of the areas that you work in?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to not thinking I have to do everything. Like it's okay for me to realize that covering professional wrestling for me is a part-time gig. So we launched Believe in Pro Wrestling in January, and I was gung-ho about doing a show every single day. We got to drop it here. We're just going to churn out as much content as possible. I'm going to do these interviews. I'm going to write these articles, and that's all well and good at a bubble. And then, it's a stone cold kick in the sack when it doesn't take off as quickly as you would like it to, or you think it might. And you start a channel, man, it's a slog. It's a grind. Like we've gotten up to 410 subscribers now in a little over 7 months. And I'm proud of that. But man, it does take
602 years, by the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a slog, man. It is a grind. And yeah, definitely. So I've had to kind of teach myself that saying, hey, look, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Yeah. So if you don't do 5 shows a week, no one's going to think less of you for it. Right. If you're not, if I tried to cover like everything that I possibly could, like my co-host on the channel, SP3, who I believe you've had on this,
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. That man is a full-time wrestling journalist. And I am jealous of that, and the fact that he can kind of focus on that one thing. and he can watch New Japan and he can watch AEW and AEW Dark and all of these shows and ingest everything and be that wealth of knowledge of today's current product and the past that he is. He's amazing. He is a legit Dutch Mantel approved wrestling historian, right? Like that guy is amazing. And I am so happy to have
and
him
a nice guy
channel.
to boot, by the way. I'll say that as well.
Yes, he
such
is.
a nice guy.
He really, really is. I say that as somebody, I haven't even met him in person yet.
Really?
Yes. Because he lives in New York. Well, actually, he's been in the UK for like the last 4 months. And I live in Cincinnati. So we actually haven't met personally, but I consider him one of my closer friends at this point because I spend more time with him than I do any of my actual friends in person. But yeah, man, he's great. I love having him on the channel. I can't put him over enough. But for me, this is like my third or fourth gig, right? So yeah. I have to be okay with not knowing everything, and I have to be okay with not doing everything that I want to do and just pacing myself and not trying to kill myself, if that answers the question that I've been rambling on, and I totally forgot what the actual question was at this point.
Basically, what have you put in place to avoid burnout? Yeah,
there you go. So not doing not going full speed for the entire length of this marathon, pacing. You gotta and just like last week, I had to take a week off, right? I know it's like the most exciting week in wrestling in a decade with Triple H.
I will say this, it's last week at time of recording because this will be in the can for a few months. I will say that. Okay, so there we go. So yeah, absolutely. Like we're a week away from SummerSlam. I was just like, all right, I gotta take a break. I have to take a break. I'm mentally exhausted. We're gonna do one show to recap SummerSlam and then I'm taking the week off. And now we're back this week. So again, it's just kind of making time and checking on my mental health and making sure that that's right. Fair enough. So talking about Believe Pro Wrestling, how does that come about? Well, that was me kind of looking for an avenue to do my own thing. And I was approached by Believe to do a wrestling show that they did not have. They didn't have anybody covering professional wrestling at the time. Believe was a podcast network that launched in Los Angeles a few years back, primarily covering LA sports, and they have done a fantastic job of growing across the country. And so, we talked about a possible partnership, about me coming on board and bringing the interviews that I was doing for another outlet at the time and bringing those on over. And yeah, it just kind of snowballed quickly from when we started talking in November. And before I know it, we're launching in January. How do you then connect with SP3 and him become your co-host? So yeah, SP3 and I work together at that other outlet. And we still do from time to time. We do one show a week called Smack Talk with Dutch Mantel. And we had been working together for a while. And I kind of poached him. Like this was me saying, I want to do something with him because I know how good he is. And I know he will be able to carry me through on my worst day possible. So that was me scouting and going, hey, look, man, if I can find us some other work, I'm going to get this done. And I did. And he said yes. And it's been going on from then. How different is your on-camera chemistry with SP3 to your off-camera? I think it's very, very much the same. Again, we don't have a whole lot of off-camera. We haven't had to spend a whole lot of time together off-camera. So it's really true. Hard. I didn't actually think of that before I asked the question. I do. Yeah, no, totally fine. Yeah. So I mean, it's like we'll hang out a little bit pre-show and post-show, but I mean, it's pretty much the same, and I say that because I try to take the philosophy of I'm just going to be myself anyway on camera, regardless of who I'm interacting with. What you get on camera is what I am on screen. Like I learned that really early in my radio career. Like there will be, you ever heard the term shock jock? Yeah, totally. Come out on the air and talk and just say the most outlandish crap imaginable just to garner a reaction, whether they believe it or not. FYI, yeah, I can't do that. I'm not that guy. I don't want to say I hate people who do that, but I hate that style
of thinking, right? It's great to have opinions, but man, if you just constantly lie all the time, you end up, getting busted for it. And I'm not good at lying, so don't even try. So I'm just who I am on screen. If you like me, great. If you don't, there are a million other wrestling podcasts that you can watch.
Talking about there being so many wrestling podcasts out there, what do you think makes yours and SP3's different?
We're really not. Like, if just to be completely, blunt, honest, I mean, every Joe Schmo out there, it seems like there is a wrestling podcast for every wrestling fan that there currently is watching on Monday Night Raw, right? Like, everybody has a camera, and it is great. It's just all about whether or not you connect with the people that you like. And we are honest, and sometimes brutally honest to a fault, and we have fun, and we try not to take things so seriously, and we'll call people out on their BS. And we also have some pretty cool stuff that other podcasts don't. I'm not saying that we're special because I had an interview with Bobby Lashley that dropped this week, but
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, not everybody has that kind of access, so it's nice to have that and to have the trust of WWE, and I'm starting to build that with AEW as well. But to sit in here and say that we're reinventing the wheel, we're not. We try to be different, and we try to adapt the format a little bit and change things up and figure out what works. But we do have a pretty cult following so far. We have a very diehard fan base who are with us for every live stream that we do on Tuesdays and are always there on Thursdays when we drop our AEW heavy show. So yeah, man, we're not inventing the wheel, but we do have a good time doing it, and we're trying to stand out as best as we can.
You spoke about there how much of a good time you do have when you're recording with SP3. If wrestling stopped being fun and you stopped enjoying wrestling or doing the podcast in general, would you have to stop?
No, I don't think so. Because, like, to be honest, man, there was a stretch earlier this year, like even like right before like all of the creative changes in WWE started happening, where I'm like, I'm just not enjoying watching Raw as much as I could be, or SmackDown for that matter. SmackDown was, I genuinely enjoyed SmackDown during the Thunderdome era when it was peak Bayley and Sasha, and it was Roman Reigns, just the early parts of the Roman Empire, right? And they were doing new stuff with Jey Uso, and I was really excited for a lot of the stuff that was going on. But man, even earlier this year, I'm just sitting here, I'm going, this is starting to feel like work. But man, like, I still enjoyed talking to the talent and interviewing the talent. And I am such a big fan of these people. And all I can do is just kind of like root for the best and hope for the best. And that was the philosophy that I took, right? I also play on words, believe, right? Believe in pro wrestling. I believe that this can be good. Right. I believe that this can be good, and I believe that it can be great. And I believe that Triple H is making this a lot more fun already. Again, here in the early days, we're recording this in early August right now. So it's the early part of his tenure, but I've got genuine optimism for the first time. There have been times where it has just not been fun to watch certain products. And I'll just say all of the certain products. But you know what? Again, at the end of the day, I do love this as a whole. I am a big fan of the people that I cover. And again, I would much rather be doing this than other things.
Fair enough. As you said at the start, you're not waiting tables or in a job that you hate. So
correct.
As you said, like, there is a certain amount, because I'm exactly the same with all the cool people that I've managed to interview. It's like, I could be sitting on my own and no one could be watching. So it's very much like, I'm very happy with what I do. And I shouldn't be talking about myself. I do apologize. I just slip into it sometimes, and
dude, I'm the same way, right? Like, when I interview, you gotta try to connect somehow, right? And that's my style when I do an interview, is like, if it ends up being more of a conversation than question answer, great. Do I think sometimes I dominate too much of the conversation? Yes, I think I talked for 3.5 minutes of my 8-minute interview with Bobby Lashley, but still, it was a fun conversation. And at the end of the day, if the audience is enjoying it, who cares who's talking?
I think only thing that I get, and I am curious to know your thoughts on like your interview style, but like sometimes I do get, don't talk over your guests, and I am really working on that. And like, if I do, I apologize.
No, you broke up. What did you say?
I said, like, the comment that I get a lot is, please don't talk over your guests, or like when they're trying to answer, don't like ramble with more questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had an issue with that. Not talking over so much, but I do ramble on a lot, like incessantly, sometimes when I'm asking questions. And part of that is like, I'll be searching for the question that I want to ask while I'm asking it. And sometimes I can lead down a twisting road, and sometimes I end up asking more than one question at a time. But you know, more often than not, the talent that I have spoken with, you know, they react very well to it. And yeah, we just kind of go from there, and they give me the answer they give me. And if I have another follow-up question in there, I'll just move right along and just see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. So like, how do you feel like you've changed as an interviewer as you've done more interviews? Because like you say, you've slowly started to grow as an interviewer.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is growing from that, what I alluded to a moment ago. Man, when I first started out, I was very like, I have to stick to the script, because one of my Achilles heels growing up has been just having the courage to ask questions. And I brought this up to a few other people, just talking to them, just, you know, talking shop about the business. It's like, if my grade school teachers or even high school teachers like saw what I'm doing today, they wouldn't believe that I was the same person, because I was petrified to even ask a question in elementary school, yet just out of the fear of looking stupid. Yet now I ask questions literally for a living.
Almost.
Right, exactly. So it's always been that kind of, all right, in the back of my mind, I don't want to ask a dumb question, and I don't want to ask a question that's going to offend somebody, right? So it's always there. Like Nick Hausman, I love Nick Hausman from Wrestling Inc. If you haven't had a chance to talk with him, that dude has the biggest balls.
Fingers crossed, because I've asked, and I'm hoping
that dude has the biggest balls in wrestling media. That guy will ask any question, every question, no matter the setting, no matter what we're there to actually talk about. Sometimes even if they've been told, I haven't witnessed this, but I have been told, even if media has been told, don't ask about that, he will still ask about it. And I wish I had that ability. I just don't have the gumption to do that. And maybe one day that I will. But yeah, man, just kind of getting more comfortable. I think that's the biggest thing, is getting more comfortable, focusing on listening to the guest and not focusing on all the other stuff. Because as you know, you're a host. What you say you got like if you do a WWE interview, maybe they'll give you, unless you're like Ryan Satin or Renee Paquette or somebody like that, you get maybe 10 to 20 minutes. And if they give you a hard window, you got to be out. So you're looking at the time and you're focusing on the time, and you're like, all right, well, I have to ask about the event, and I have to ask about this, and I have to ask about this. So I got to make sure I'm getting that in. Oh, wait, what did this dude just say? And you miss something great. Right. Yeah. So it's like, it's training your brain to go, all right, got to keep time, make sure you're asking about this, but you're also trying to listen. And I think I've done a better job of doing that and getting into those and following in on those follow-up questions. And then again, just being conversation, and just talking. And if the interview goes a certain way, it goes a certain way. Like I've had one question that I have wanted to ask Damian Priest for a couple of months now, and I've interviewed him twice in those couple of months, and I missed it both times. So again, it's just where the conversation goes. So again, it's just, you know, one of the things that it's okay. You know, like I think I've definitely grown at being better conversationally and showing more of my personality in the interviews as well.
Fair enough. So what is something that maybe, actually 2 pieces of advice you would give someone that wants to build a YouTube channel like I'm doing or you're doing to do interviews? What pieces of advice would you give?
Get used to rejection, right? Like that's going to happen. Because it really is hard to get that foot in and kind of build that trust, you know, with these major wrestling companies to kind of get those interviews. And like the first time I ever attempted to get somebody to do an interview, it was for a radio station, a local radio station in Cincinnati. And I tried for a year. Like I emailed WWE at least once every 2 weeks to a month for a year before I got a response.
Ooh.
And the response
was no,
period. But it was a start, man. It was a start. So like finally, when I did get an opportunity to interview somebody, it was because Raw was coming to Cincinnati and they were doing the local media tours. So, and you know, I didn't go through WWE. I went through the arena and I got the arena to set up the interview with me. Right. So, and I think I want to say it was, I can't remember who it was. I think it was with Kofi Kingston was the first one that I did over the phone. And that was to preview the fact that tickets were going on sale. Okay. And then when they came into town, I got to do Natalia in person. Absolutely loved it. So Natalia was my first ever in-person interview with WWE. So those were my first 2 attempts at doing it. And I crushed it. I knocked it out of the park. And I think I kind of showed them that I was trustworthy enough. And at least, you know, I wasn't there to kind of waste their time. So yeah. I took to take away from that little story there, persistence. All right. Be polite, be persistent. Don't, you know, don't get egregious. Even if they say no in a short say, it's like, thank you for getting back with me. Cause that's all I want. Right. Like, I don't want to be left in the dark. Just if the answer is no, great. Just let me know. So I'm not sitting here waiting, you know, with my thumb up my butt for weeks at a time. So be persistent. And if you get that opportunity, man,
try and knock it out of the park.
Try to knock it out of the park, or at least don't embarrass yourself, right? Like, don't look dumb. Like my biggest fear, don't look dumb. And you know, you can slowly start to build a working relationship. So like the relationship I have now with WWE, man, there was a point where I went from I couldn't get them to respond to me to now they were reaching out with me with me for interview opportunities. So that's when I knew like I had actually earn their trust. So, and a lot of that ramped up because of the pandemic. They couldn't do all the traveling and local media. So they kind of really ramped up their grassroots efforts and doing, you know, virtuals online and things like that. So that helped out a lot as well. So I kind of got lucky. That's kind of like a silver lining to the whole pandemic thing was them doing virtual interviews for the Thunderdome era and things of that nature. So, but yeah, man, just be persistent, be polite, knock out the opportunities when you absolutely get them. And yeah, it does take time. Patience is time. And you know what, if you can if you're trying to build something from scratch, you know, start on the indie scene, you know, start building the relationships there, reach out to Impact and MLW and you know, shooting for the moon is great. Emailing WWE and AEW is great because those are the big people who are on TV. There is a lot of really talented people out there right now who are well known, who are out on the independent scene as well, that you can build a connection with and, you know, start building an audience with and kind of cutting your chops as far as interviews are concerned. And yeah, then you'll be better prepared for when the big times come.
Do you think that, speaking of being better prepared, do you think that the fact that your YouTube channel has grown, like, is it grown at a quick rate or a slow rate in your opinion? I should have asked that question first, really.
Yeah, man, I think not as fast as I was hoping, but again, it's so hard to break through because again, it is such a oversaturated market, right? It's just absolutely flooded. And when you have people like Chris Jericho and Renee Paquette and the Bellas and, you know, all these people who are already stars who have been in the industry, who have their own podcasts. And then you have, you know, Corey Graves who does his podcast and, you know, he's going to get the Baileys of the world, like fresh off of their return, right? You know that it's really hard to compete with that. And even the interviews that I do get, I'm not getting anything special, right? I'm getting the same interviews that Fightful's getting, that Comic Book is getting, that, you know, Wrestling Inc. is getting, that CBS is getting, you know, it's all about making the most of the opportunities and trying to make them different, maybe asking different questions and trying to have a little bit of fun. Just to try to stand out and be as different as possible. And I think that has helped grow the channel quicker than maybe some other channels might, because I do have that connection to get in and get those guests. But it's been a slog. It's been a grind. I was hoping for faster acceleration, but then again, I have delusions of grandeur, right? Like I'm one of those guys who hops in and I'm like, all right, yes, this is going to be great from the launch. This is going to be huge. And then, we like our first show did like 20 views. So, it just is what it is.
Does that make you, we are going to wrap this up in a minute, but does that make you thankful for the success your channel has had already? The fact that, I probably butchered that question, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I am, I'm grateful for any audience. That's the thing that I've taken away from all of this, because like even when I worked for another outlet and I was getting 10 times the amount of views or clicks or whatever the heck it was, at that point I was thinking, man, I think this could be better. And I had these delusions of coming out and starting my own thing, and instantly it was going to be better. And it hasn't, but it has been a lot less stressful. I am my own boss. I have my own creative direction. You hear that a lot in WWE. That's something that's important to me, that I can call my own shots. And I'm just grateful for the audience, and literally any audience that I have. Like I said, we got our hardcore 20 to 30 to 40 people that tune into our shows every week and watch my interviews and exchange with us on social media. And I love every single one of them. I really, really do. So as we look at wrapping this up, Rick, because I do want to be respectful of your time, the question that I end all my interviews on is, with YouTube, with podcasting, with social media in general, we're all sort of going to live forever in some sort of very weird way. So what is one product from you, a podcast or a YouTube video, that you want the good people to check out? And then what is one that you're like, if you could avoid that, I would appreciate it? Man, I think the chat that I did with Renee Paquette was particularly good. It was just two people for an hour talking shop. And that was one that I went into that I was really, really intimidated by, because I consider Renee Paquette to be one of the top two people at what she does.
Yeah.
She is a fantastic interviewer, and I mean fantastic interviewer. And so now I'm going into this interviewing somebody that I am nowhere even near on their level, in my opinion. And so it was incredibly intimidating, but she's so great. And it was such a fun conversation. And we literally just shot the shit for an hour, and it was spectacular. And there was a lot of really, really great information in there. So I would suggest you check out that one. Also, my conversation with Athena, just because Athena's awesome. That has nothing to do with me, period. She's just great, and she needs more TV time. And hopefully by the time this airs, she's getting it. One to avoid. Anything I did pre-2020.
Okay. That's an honest answer.
As I was trying to navigate, like I look back on some of the stuff I did now, I was like, oh, good Jesus criminy. It's amazing that I'm where I am today. I would say pre-pandemic, that first year I was in wrestling media when I was still trying to figure things out. And honestly, I credit that a lot to Jimmy Yang, because Jimmy Yang reached out to me and said, hey, look, you have potential, but you don't know shit about wrestling. So come work with me and I will teach you about wrestling. And I think that I have grown leaps and bounds since he kind of got me in the ring and taught me some of the basics there.
Fair enough. So as we look at wrapping this up, where can the good people find you and your content?
Oh, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Rick Ucchino. That is RickUcchino. Going to be a spelling bee here for a second.
I think I might be responsible for your YouTube, for like most of your YouTube clicks over the last couple of days, because I was trying to figure out, how do you say your last name?
My name. Yep. I
apologize for interrupting, by the way.
No, you're totally right. I totally understand that. I've been getting it forever. I have people who have known me for years who still say it wrong, so it's okay. But yeah, follow me on Twitter there. You can subscribe to the Believe in Pro Wrestling podcast, spelled BLEAV, or you can find my work on cagesightseats.com.
It's well worth doing, guys. So if you guys like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talks Rubbish. And subscribe to bodyslam.net, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube for my show with Cassidy Haynes, the WrestleWatch podcast. And follow the WrestleWatch pod on Twitter to help us pick our match every week that we're going to watch. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.